Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 10 of JuJutsu Kaisen, and I am so intrigued. This whole relationship between Mahito, not Mojito, but between Mahito and Yoshino is super intriguing to me. The fact that this young man has like gravitated towards this curse and is like, can I be like you? And I'm like, oh, you don't want that. And the fact that we know that humans can turn into curses now, they can imbue with enough curse energy to transform their bodies. And the fact that Kento, who I've fallen in love with, has already decided he's going to go confront Mahito. And I'm like, that sounds like a bad idea. And the fact that Yuuji is showing his empathy towards these curses and the fact that they were human and all these things, that these tiny pieces that seem related to each other, that I'm like, I can easily see how they're going to fit together in the narrative. And I'm wondering, I'm like, Yoshino, are you going to become a curse yourself? Kind of like Mahito and Sakuna? Like, what's happening? And so, are they going to try to use him to infiltrate the jujitsu school? Like, there's this talk about curse users, which are basically fallen jujitsu sorcerers or jujitsu sorcerers that have gone to the dark side. And it's like, and we know that Geto is one of them. So I'm like, there's a lot of pieces here that I'm seeing the threads. I'm about to connect the dots, and I'm seeing how it could happen, but we haven't gotten confirmation of it yet. But it's so intriguing. It's so intriguing. I'm so excited. So I've been waiting all week. I finally caught up to watching all these episodes, and now it's on a week-by-week basis, and I'm like, oh, I'm so excited. So it's been a fun week. I'm so ready for this episode. I hope y'all are too. It just came out, so I'm like, sometimes I wait till the evenings to record, and I'm like, no, I need to find out now. So I hope you all have enjoyed these reactions. Thank you so much for commenting. Please, no spoilers. Feel free to comment down below, but we are going to start episode 10 of JuJutsu Kaisen, Idol Transfiguration. Ooh. But we are going to start this episode here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Oh. Holy crap, y'all. Okay, so much with this episode. We're getting into some really interesting philosophical things with Mahito, which he reads a lot, clearly, as we've seen him. He's in the book every time we see him, so it's not surprising that he's gotten into all these philosophies, and he was a human once, apparently, so there's so many strange implications with all this. One, Mahito having this kind of nihilistic, like, life doesn't matter, so if you want to kill somebody, kill him. If you want to do whatever you want, do it. Is interesting. And putting this perspective and philosophy on our poor impressionable Yoshino is terrifying. And he was clearly about to, like, do some kind of jujitsu stuff on that teacher, which, man, it's so sad because Yoshino has such a skewed perspective of the world, and it's a perspective that has been fostered and cultivated by the environment around him. Like, you compare him and Yuuji are showing to have such parallels with one another, just in terms of their school. Like, in episode 1, we had Yuuji had the 2 members of the occult club with him, and they just had this fun little club. They weren't doing anything. They were just in this room goofing off and talking about, like, scary stories. And they had the guy come in, and he's like, this club needs to do something. And they're like, oh, we've done our research. Here's our stuff. And it parallels Yoshino's experience with the movie club so well, except it's a different environment. So instead of the nerdy guy coming in being like, well, if you can prove your research, you can keep the club, these assholes come in and they're just like, just boot them out. And so it's a totally different experience. And it's made an impression on Yoshino to the point where Yoshino doesn't believe that people are capable of love, basically. He says that love just is not, he says, and I like to talk about culture and Japanese culture. He's like, people in Japan have skewed that word love and changed it into fondness because they don't want to admit that they love things, and he has such a negative view of the world. And he makes a really good point about that teacher, because that teacher in the last episode, that teacher didn't do anything. They just turned a blind eye and let those people beat him up. And then for him to come back and say, oh, your friends, why didn't you go to your friend's funeral? And he's like, those guys burned a cigarette on his face and like made him eat a bug and took pictures of him, beat the crap out of him. They're not his friends. And he makes a really good point about how, people like that teacher it's perpetuating the cycle. And so it's easy to see how he can be so manipulated by Mahito, because based on Yoshino's experience, his worldview has not been presented in a very good positive light. He hasn't had that positive atmosphere that Yuuji has had. And obviously Yuuji's had his grandfather and his friends and that environment to help shape who he is. And it's helped shape his moral compass. And Yoshino's has been drastically altered too. So I find it so fascinating that Yoshino and Yuuji have met and run into each other, because it's like Yuuji could have that positive impact on Yoshino. Like he could have such a positive impact on him. And it's like, what? It's so interesting. And then Mahito is terrifying. Like he is, I mentioned this in the ED, he is basically the evil, in terms of power levels, it looks like he's like the evil version of Gojo. And his ability is manipulating souls. So everyone has a soul that he can manipulate. And his philosophy is the body forms around the soul. So he can manipulate that body and alter the soul at the same time. And that's terrifying. And he makes the comment that he's experimented on all these regular humans, and it's so far not worked out how he wants it. But, so yeah, just, oh, man. So interesting. And I'm terrified for Kento, because he was introduced last episode, and I love him already, and I'm like, I don't want Mahito to transfigure him. I'm like, no, he's such a cool character. I don't want anything bad to happen to him. So I'm hoping that this overtime ability he has will let him bypass all that. That'd be great. So, oh my gosh, y'all. It's just so scary. I've had with other shows a bad history of saying characters I like and then bad stuff happens to them. So I'm like, please don't do that in this show. But I don't know. So apparently we're going to get more on Mahito versus Kento. Yuji's going to have a talk by the river with Yoshino. My only hope is that Yuuji can kind of be this positive influence on Yoshino's life. Like, I want him to be a positive influence. I'm so nervous on what's going to happen between them. I don't know, y'all. But this idea, this view of humans as making up excuses. The curses, especially Mahito, have a very negative view of humanity, of them just being like made up of lies, nothing but excuses, like they're just impure, corrupt beings. And this idea of hatred being a pure emotion, and them saying, we just do whatever we want. We don't make up excuses or lies. We just do what we please, and we live this pure existence. And it's like, is it pure though? Talking about morality and how we construct morality and how people view different, things with what's good and what's bad. Like, the show is bringing up a lot of interesting perspectives and philosophies, and what do we do with them? So it's like, And then there's Yuuji, who's like, wait, what are we doing? Oh my gosh. But as an antagonist, I really like Mahito already. And I find his relationship with this boy super intriguing. I'm really curious about it. Especially him putting so much trust of this information with Yoshino. Makes me nervous. But I'm curious what you all thought of this episode. These last few episodes have been so freaking good. I'm so nervous for Kento though. I'm really nervous for him. I don't want it to be a scenario where he doesn't come back. And if Yuji's like, oh, where's Kento? And we're like, we don't know. And his line about leaving emotions away from work, but he wipes the tear out of the former human, the curse's eye. It's like, I'm kind of with Mahito. Like, you say that you leave your emotions at home, but you left Yuuji out of this because you didn't want him getting involved and getting hurt. And I'm glad, because Yuuji wouldn't have stood a chance against this guy. No way. But it makes me really nervous for Kento. I'm like, dude, do not get taken by this guy, please. So, I'm curious, y'all. Please no spoilers, but feel free to comment down below. I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction, and I hope y'all have a safe week. Stay safe and take care, And yeah, we're going to be back next week with episode 11 of Jujutsu Kaisen. Bye.